All right, so recording is started. Thank you for reminding me. I always forget that. It is a failing of mine. Anyways, so these are the introductions that we did, we'll just
Hey Rick, can I interrupt for just a second?
Absolutely, Glenn.
This is Glenn Allen, Division Manager, Fresno County. I do see a couple names I recognize on the attendee list that are representing the GSAs. I thought it might be a good opportunity to give them a chance to introduce themselves and let folks know which GSA they're representing.
Chad Wegley, Kings River East GSA.
Scott Sills, North Fork Kings GSA.
Jim Stillwell, Farmers Water District GSA.
Antonio Solorio, Westlands Water District GSA.
Steve Pickens, North Kings GSA.
Are those all the GSAs? I'm going to mute my phone so that doesn't happen again. And then for those of you on the call, or those of you that are on your computers, if you could mute yourselves, and then when it comes time for the Q&A, or if you have questions along the way, I suppose you can unmute and ask. We're pretty informal here. But let's see if we can get through this real quick. The purpose of today is to open communications between the drillers and the GSAs. So that's the purpose here. We want to get that dialogue going, and we want to get some comfort level with respect to those two parties especially. And we want to provide the drillers with basic information on Sigma, very basic, very quick, and then make drillers aware of the differences between the GSAs and environmental health rules, and then how to help ensure timely processing of issuance of your permits. We're going to go through really briefly some of the things we went through last time, so I'm going to gloss over a lot of it, hopefully. But then the last thing is be able to speak to you and connect to your clients. Excuse me, be able to help you speak to your clients on with correct information about the GSAs and the potential use of their water wells, or maybe even limitations of their water wells, depending on where that's located and all the kinds of factors involved. So the next slide, we'll have Cassie with the North Kings GSA take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Rick, for the introduction, and thank you all for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. When we had our first discussion with the drillers, we spent quite a bit of time going over Sigma basics, and rather than repeat that, I'm just going to kind of start with the most important information, which is there are a lot of GSAs, there are a few different basins, there are a lot of GSPs, and they're all located within Fresno County. So I can't emphasize that enough, and Rick mentioned it in terms of the autonomy, each of the GSAs having autonomy with a different GSP that they are charged with implementing to achieve sustainable conditions. So it's really, really important that you understand which GSA you're working in and how to get a hold of that GSA representative, and more importantly, the requirements that that specific GSA has for new well requirements or extraction limitations, etc. So that does not make your job very easy, but we do have some really good tools that can help you with figuring out who to contact, where to contact them, and the best way to get information. And one of those tools is the Sigma portal. And so it's a simple GIS tool that's available. The link to the website is listed there. This is also on the Fresno County website, which we'll provide a link to at the end. You type in the address of the location where you're going to be drilling, and it will pop up information on the GSA that particular location is located within. It will also give you contact information for that GSA representative. as well as the basin information. So that is how you're going to know for sure with certainty which GSA you're working in. And then you can follow that up with making sure you know what the requirements are for that specific GSA. So you're going to want to bookmark that tool if you haven't done so already. That is going to become your best friend in terms of making sure you're satisfying the GSA requirements in addition to getting your permit for drilling from Fresno County. So next slide, please. In terms of our timeline, we have a lot of work to do. We have what seems like a very long time to do it, a 20-year timeline, but it's going fast, and we're in year 2 of implementation. And so the GSPs, the groundwater sustainability plans that identify how the GSAs are going to achieve sustainability, have been submitted for the critically overdrafted basins to DWR. For the medium priority basins, those GSPs are under development and in the development phase and will be submitted to DWR by January 31, 2022. So the majority of Fresno County is in a priority critically overdrafted basin. So we're charging forward, including the North Kings GSA and all the GSAs that were listed on the phone as part of the introductions. We're charging forward with implementation. And what does that mean? That means that GSAs are starting to already in year 2 develop the policies and requirements for their specific GSA, implementing those tools that are going to be vital for them to be able to achieve sustainable conditions by that 2040 milestone. So that's important to understand, and will give you the justification for why some of these changes are happening, and they're happening quick, and it's important that you're aware of those as you continue with your drilling. So next slide, please. So the GSAs have been coordinating quite a bit, and I know Glenn and Rick have been involved in this, as well as several other county staff, in coordinating with Fresno County on policy considerations. And that's important because Fresno County covers all of those GSAs, and they are an integral part of that process. So the GSAs have been meeting with Fresno County, and the county is represented on those GSA boards. And some of the outcomes of those coordination meetings with Fresno County include revisions to the new well permit application, which you're familiar with. Those changes have been implemented starting early last year. They have implemented a permit review process, so they forward the permit applications for new wells to the GSA managers or points of contacts for the GSAs for review. And then also we continue to meet quarterly on other things that need to be coordinated with Fresno County. So that's been helpful. Fresno County staff has been exceptional in terms of being available and open to changes that might help with SGMA implementation. So we're very appreciative of that. Specifically for the North Kings GSA, I wanted to highlight that we have now adopted policy 2021-001. It's our new well review policy, and it was adopted by our board on February 25th. And in coordination with permitting agencies, we have arranged to allow up to 5 days for review of new well permit applications, essentially to gather information on what is how the GSA will be impacted by that particular new well that's being considered. So it's important to note, though, that that's up to 5 days, and Rick will talk about this a little bit more in his the remainder of his presentation. It's up to 5 days, but the permitting authority retains all of the, or the permitting agency, I'm sorry, retains all of the permitting authority. So they have that discretion to make judgment calls about emergency wells, and they do not have to or not bound to honor that 5-day review period. It's just an up to 5 days to allow the GSA to review and coordinate with the well owner and the driller on any special considerations that they might want to take into account as they're going forward with that new well. And then lastly, just the GSAs have adopted rules and regulations for wells, and that's important. That's in process. I can't tell you if and when and how that's happening. It's just really important that I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for you to coordinate with the GSA managers and understand what requirements are being implemented by those specific GSAs. And you can do that in a fairly simple way. Most of the GSAs are shooting out information via email. You can join the email distribution list. When new policies are being developed, they're posting that and asking for public comment. And so that's an easy way to just kind of stay in tune. I know that emails can be overwhelming, but that's an easy way to stay in tune with what's happening in that particular GSA. I do want to give a brief appreciation shout out to Tom Krzan. He was part of the North Kings GSA work group that developed the new well review policy. So Mr. Krzan, if you have any comments during the question period, feel free to add those. But we definitely wanted to consider driller feedback in the development of our policies, and we're appreciative that Mr. Krzan was able to provide that during the development of our new well review policy. So now Fresno County is going to take back over the presentation and go through a few more slides, and then we will all be around. All the GSA managers that are on the line and myself will be around to answer any additional questions you might have.
Had to mute myself there. All right, thank you, Cassie. So really quickly, the roles here, breaking it down, nuts and bolts, is EH is going to be permitting the wells, and the GSAs are going to be, the GSAs are going to be regulating the use of those wells. So, you know, EH is going to be permitting them. We're not changing our responsibilities here, but the GSAs are going to be regulating the use of the water in those wells. So again, just because the client drills a well doesn't mean they get to use that well as they saw fit or as they intended. They may need not be able to use that well. And so the best way to find that out before the well is drilled is to contact those GSAs to make sure that there's not going to be any limitations, or if there are limitations, they can plan for that ahead of time and not be surprised afterwards and get mad at the driller because the driller didn't tell them and charged them for the well and all the rest of it. So they may be limited. They may have limits as far as acre feet per year. They may have water meters that are required to go on the wells. They may need have sounding devices. I'm not sure. Again, every GSA is going to be autonomous, and there may be other, a myriad of other things that may be required as well. So it behooves you to get your client in touch with the GSAs, or you can get in touch with the GSAs and have that conversation. So our relationship is still, our process rather, is still ministerial. We're not changing that part. Again, our process really can't change. If we start changing our process and we start making these decisions or even enforcing GSA requirements, that means we're not a ministerial process anymore, and everything's got to go through CEQA at that point. There's been some trouble in other counties along those lines as well, not necessarily related to GSAs, but whether or not their process is still ministerial or not. And we fully intend to keep our process ministerial, so we're able to get these permits in and out as fast as possible. And that's really our goal, is to get these permits in and out. And we'll talk a little more about how you can do that in just a bit. But EH is routing all the well permits located in the GSAs to those GSAs for those reviews. We've been doing that for a while, and we'll continue to do that. And then the GSAs will have conversations directly with the property owner and/or driller regarding any requirements, and so that you as drillers need to plan and bid your jobs accordingly. So probably a good first phone call is going to be to the GSAs, just to talk about what may be some issues that come up as you bid your job. That's my suggestion. I'll let the GSAs speak more to that if they feel like they need to later on. So another thing is the domestic privates monitoring wells, and all of these wells here. All of these wells are going to be processed as we're processing now. So there shouldn't be a lot of slowdowns on those. Again, we want to get these things in and out as fast as possible, because then if we don't, then we get a huge backlog of well permits, and we just get, it gets to be a bit much. So we've also, I don't know if you guys know, but we've also added another member to our well crew or water crew to process these permits. So hopefully we can get them done in a more expedient manner. And I'm hearing that good news that that's actually happening. So that's good. Anyways, GSAs will still be looking at these wells, even though we may be proceeding with the permitting of them. Doesn't necessarily mean the GSAs are done with it. They still have to review them, and they may still have conversations that happen after we approve the permit. So just be aware of that. Just because we approve the permit doesn't mean the GSAs are done with it. So again, stay in contact with those GSAs. Good communication with them is going to do you a world of good. And then the domestic publics, industrials and commercials, especially some ag wells, we may give more time. Usually those projects are going to take a little more time to work their way through the system anyway. So usually we have some times, and usually for the domestic publics, the industrials and the commercials, we're sending those to the state for their comments, and that usually takes some time anyway. And usually there's not any problems with that in our experience. The real issues come with the domestic privates in particular, and some of the ags. And then there's going to be emergencies. You're going to have a client that's out of water. You're going to have a farmer whose well went dry and their crops are in jeopardy if they don't get a new well drilled immediately, or the one that they have deepened or reconditioned or whatever. So that's going to come up, and we're going to proceed and issue those permits as soon as possible. We're not going to wait for, and each case is specific to its own circumstances, but in general, we're not going to wait for a GSA to comment on those, especially if it's a replacement well. They probably don't have much to say about that, except maybe with the addition of metering and that kind of thing. I'm not speaking for the GSAs. Again, I'll let them speak to that themselves. Anyways, if we see this emergency process, and we haven't seen it yet, and I hope we continue to not see it abused, but if we do see it abused in the future, we may have to come up with some sort of verification procedure that it is in fact an emergency. We don't want to do that. Again, our goal is to get these permits in and out. We need to do our job and make sure that they're sited correctly, so that they're not too close to a source of contamination, or that the seals are deep enough to again protect that water for those clients that are going to be using that water, and to also protect the groundwater. But we really do want to get through these things as fast as possible. And then additionally, some GSAs may request a hold be placed on the well destruction permits to give an adequate time for the evaluation and conversation with the property owner for use as a monitoring well. So GSAs will be in contact with the property owners potentially on a well destruction. I don't know that they'll want to review absolutely every one, but in certain areas they may want to decide that if they can work it out with the property owner to keep that well as a monitoring well for unspecified period of time. I'm sure they'll specify one. Anyways, so how can you help us help you and get your permit out faster? That's the point here. So basically, we want to verify that all information on the permit is complete and accurate, and including all of these things. So this is going to be a big deal. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out what is written on the permit because it's not legible. So that's going to slow us down a lot. We're going to have to get our decoder, or maybe even call you in some cases and figure out what the heck that says on the plot plan. Well, I put it on the plot plan. Okay, yeah, okay, but we didn't know because we couldn't read it. So make sure that's on there. Make sure the property owner info is on there. Your information as the driller, especially your email address, because we'll be emailing you the permits as we have been in this new age of digital communication. And that's going to be even more important once we get our new database system in place. So make sure we have your email address, it's accurate, that you're checking it, because that's where those are going to land. And then also all of these things related to the plot plan. So where the other existing wells are on the property, and even neighboring properties over the property lines. What are those? What's going on in that property? How close is their septic system and all the rest of it? But septic systems and sewer systems, close to or that are on the existing property that you're bidding, those need to be disclosed, and distances need to be put on there as well. So animal enclosures and rivers, lakes, creeks, canals, drainages, and other features that may pose a threat to the groundwater, some sort of contamination like cemeteries or some sort of chemical storage facility, those kinds of things. We're going to need to see all of those so that we can make good decisions and cite the well correctly and work with you guys on that. So GPS, again, this is nothing new, but we need all 6 digits after the decimal point, right? So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 digits after the decimal point on there for both the lat and the long. We don't want the minutes and seconds. We don't want that version. We need the decimal point version, as you know. And then also send your permits to this email address. And I think we're doing good on that. I haven't heard any issues with people sending them to different individuals in our office. Obviously, the problem with that is if they're on vacation, out of the office or in the field, they're not going to be able to get to that in a timely manner, and you're going to get frustrated. So the best way is to send it to this email address. What happens is we have staff that monitor that email address all day long, and they pull those well permits, they recognize them, they'll pull them off, and they'll process them immediately and get them into the hopper. And that way we can start processing them. But if you send it to an individual and they're not around, that's going to be a problem for you because it's not going to get processed immediately. So make sure that happens. And then you may consider also sending the well permit to the GSA, either before or while you're sending it to us. And that way they can get on with it sooner. They can review it sooner, and that'll help save some time in the long run. And also the GSA requirement conversation needs to happen with the GSA and not with the AH. Again, we're in our box and they're in their box, and so we need to keep our process ministerial. So we can't be getting involved in the GSA issues that may come up. So those conversations need to happen with the GSAs. And then the well permit, you guys have all seen our new well permit. It's not new anymore. But just to quickly go through that, again, we need those, the GPS like we talked about with the 6 digits. We need a reason for destruction, and that will help decide whether or not they're going to want to pursue that maybe as a monitoring well for a period of time. And so the GSAs are going to be on there, so put the GSA name there. And I think this should still be clickable on the permit, so you can click on that and get to the Sigma web page that the county has put in, and then you can locate your address and then go right to that GSA and have that conversation with them as well. And then the next one, we've got, again, the anticipated total well depth and perf depths. So those are going to be on there if you know them. A lot of times, especially on the west side with the water tables doing all kinds of crazy things, even from parcel to parcel, you won't know. Even east, I mean, I don't know that you're really ever going to know where those perf depths are going to be, but if you do, if you're in an area where you know where they're at, then put them in there. Property line is new, so that, distance to property line, 15-foot minimum to a property line. But then, look over the fence and see what's on the other side. You may have to interview those clients as well and figure out where those septic tanks are, leach fields are, so that you're not going to be too close to them as well. And then, of course, give us at least 48 hours before you pour the annual seal. We need to have that notice to be able to get people out there, and that's very important. Also, no well can be drilled before you receive the approved permit. So if you haven't received the approved permit, don't drill. Don't do it. The problem can be you could have sited that well in an area that's too close to some sort of contamination, and now you need to destroy what you've drilled and start over again, and you don't want to do that. Fortunately, that doesn't happen that often, but still don't take that risk. So the next, and I say still coming up because this portal is taking a little while. I guess it takes a long time to develop software, or to comply with everything we need it to. But we still are in the process of designing a new online portal so that you can log in and submit your permits that way instead of on paper or in a digital format like we have now. But you'll be able to submit them online, and you'll be able to pay for it online, and you'll just get in line that much sooner. So this new portal system is if it works correctly, it's going to be a great way of speeding things up for us and helping us review these things in a more expedient manner. So looking forward to that. And of course, when this does come up, we'll either schedule another meeting to kind of show you around, or we'll provide some sort of instructions, video, written, something else on our website. And then so that is all to come. Here's the Sigma website. And if I can I click on it? Let me see if I can click on it here. I'm not sure I can click on it. It's not letting me click. Well, if I were, I think I may have it up here. Hang on. Here it is. So this is if you click on it, if I could have, it would have gone to this website. So at the top, here's what it looks like. You may recognize that. I stole that for the flyer. Anyways, if we go down here, here's the all the GSAs. And if you don't know what GSA you're in, here's this cool little interactive map. And it takes you right to this interactive map. You just need to hit agree and OK. And then you can put in your, oops, that's not the right, your address. There we go. Let's give that one a shot. All right, so here it is. What GSA is it going to be in? Just click on the property. See how it says 1 of 3? Click the next arrow. That gives you property information. Click the next arrow. Here's the GSA information right here. It's a Northport Kings GSA. Click on more info. It'll take you to their website. And typically, if you go to the contact us, if you just want to, you can read through this. There's lots of useful information here. You can send them a message here. You can call them down here. I don't know that I've seen one without a phone number, but there's ways you can get a hold of them right up here, and you can sign up for their news feed right there as well. So those are all good ways of getting more information. All right, here's where we have our question and answer period. I know we've kind of thrown a lot at you. Some of this stuff, probably most of it, you've seen before, but we'd like to open it up for you guys to have opportunity to ask questions. So there's, for those of you, we have a lot of people on the phone, so you're not going to be able to raise your hand. So just, if you have a question, unmute, if you're on the computer, you can put your questions in the chat as well, and I'll go ahead and read those. But go ahead. Anybody that has questions, feel free. This is your time.
This is Ben Centers from GSA on the west side. My question is if the permit were to require the GSA representative's signature, how is that not still a ministerial with respect to the county if you put the discretion on the GSA to give the thumbs up or thumbs down, and by the time they get to you with their application, either has it or it doesn't. So it's kind of a yes or no with respect to the county.
So let me go back to the permit. Good grief. How come I can't? All right, so the permit is here. How come it's not going? Here we go. So here's the permit. This is basically just the driller telling us what GSA they're in. There's no signature that the GSA needs to sign off on.
Right. Yeah, I understand that, and I guess my concern is that we're kind of creating a backward system where ultimately the new well owner is on the bottom and the least informed of this. And so, as you know, it's a condition that's being created where you can drill a well and they don't end up getting to use it. And the reasoning I'm understanding from the county is you want to keep this ministerial. And so my question is if on this permit, if you required the GSA to just sign off on it, how is that not still ministerial on Fresno County's end, where, you know, if you have the signature from your GSA rep, it's a thumbs up, and if you don't, it's a thumbs down?
So we're proceeding with issuing the permit. We give time as a matter of I don't know what the right word is here, but convenience to the GSA to be able to comment on that well with the property owner directly. So we're still going to issue the permit for that well. We're not waiting for a GSA approval or thumbs up, thumbs down. Our process is not bound by the GSA's interaction with the property owner or the well driller. Does that answer the question?
It does. It just doesn't really answer, you know, why you couldn't include that and have it still be ministerial. And I just want to relay my concerns that we're creating this kind of backward system that may create some headaches down the road for all parties involved except for the county.
I hear what you're saying. I don't know that there's a good answer for that. I think if we were to require a GSA signature or thumbs up or thumbs down on that, it would probably unnecessarily delay a lot of the permits that wouldn't necessarily be held up otherwise. I don't know, Glenn, do you have a good answer for that?
Yeah, so the direction we got from our county supervisors was that this system, the permitting system, was going to operate autonomously from the GSAs, and the priority was to issue the permits as they came in. We will continue to coordinate with the GSAs, but they are not going to interfere with the issuance of permits, essentially.
Thanks, Glenn. All right, so I see on the chat, and we can have a further discussion with that. I didn't catch the name of the last person that spoke, but if you want, we can have a further discussion with that. So I got a chat question here. It says, I saw that there's a fee of $710 for the permit. How is the fee set? So we set our fees based on our activities involved in processing the application and doing the field work and then finishing it up. So it's all based on actual time spent on each of the permits. So that's how those fees are set. That's how we set all of our fees in environmental health. Kings River Drilling says sometimes the 48-hour requirement when calling for inspection places the integrity of the well in trouble due to the caving, especially in sandy soil. Is there an option for drilling for the drilling company? You can always talk with us about that. You know, and I know that can be an issue. We do want to get that 48 hours. A lot of times that's not the scenario. So we want to get that 48 hours to be able to get us an opportunity to get staff out there to see that. But there are going to be those times when, you know, things are looking pretty tenuous out there. So, you know, we're not oblivious to that. So we'll make do as we can. accommodate.
Hey, Rick, this is Cassie. I was just going to comment on the $710 fee that, you know, you might want to mention that includes a one-time water quality sampling as well as some other things in addition to just the staff cost to recuperate for processing and review of the permit application.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do offer for domestic privates, we do offer a free one-time water sampling. And so we'll go out there, we send a letter to the property owner calls us back, and we set something up on the calendar, and we get out there and sample it, and then we get results back and send it back to the property owner. So they have some idea of the quality of their water that they're going to be drinking. And that's again, a free service. It's free because that's already built into the fee. But that's how that's done. Any other questions? We got a lot of GSA members on the line, so those folks can answer questions as you have them.
This is Sue Reese. I'm in the North Kings GSA, and I have two questions. Number one, did the county fee go up? I don't remember that it was 710 previously. Did it go up?
It did go up. I believe, was it last year or the year before?
The year prior.
I think the year prior. Thank you, Erica.
Okay. So, and then another question is, oh, sorry. Did you want to say more?
No, that's it.
Okay. And then test for what? For which contaminants?
So we look for bacteria. So we run a coliform panel, and we run nitrates. So we run those two. And then
okay. So no. Depending on the area, we'll do gross alpha or DBCP, depending on the area.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Thank you, Erica.
They will do DBCP? Okay. How about the TCP and some of the others?
I'm not sure that we do the TCP, but I know that's an issue.
No, we currently do not.
We do not. Okay. Thank you, Erica.
Okay. And then the other thing I was going to say is that Cassie, you can correct me if I'm stating this wrong, but I don't think anybody really comes out and says that the GSAs are creating, because they have to, another layer, an additional level of assessment prior to going to the county to get the permit. And that assessment by the GSA is to help maintain quality and quantity of water across the whole GSA. And so, yeah, we have another level of governance. That's the truth. I mean, it really is. Mm-hmm. And none of us like it, but it is what it is. So for the drillers, it almost, in my view, it almost puts, I'm gonna get in trouble saying this, sorry, but it almost puts the weight on them to make sure that an individual like myself with my domestic well, say I don't know anything about any of this, I do because I work with this, but let's say I don't. I depend on the well driller to help me know that there is now a brand new level of approval, and that is the GSA, before I can just go get my well. And in my view, the drillers need a ton of support from all the GSAs, which I think the GSAs are trying to give, and the communication between the drillers, who are the first contact to the well owner, and sometimes the only contact to the well owner. The responsibility on the drillers is great. And, you know, that communication between the driller and the GSA, especially as things get figured out, is really critical. I just want to acknowledge that to the drillers. Yeah, there is a new responsibility here for you guys, and it's a tough one for those of us who have domestic wells.
And I think, Sue, just to clarify, that the benefit is associated with future use of that well. As Rick pointed out, they will have authority through Fresno County to put the well in the ground. The question becomes, have they met the criteria for the individual GSA in terms of appurtenances, meters, sample taps, sounding tubes, etc., whatever that GSA is implementing, and are they in jeopardy of, having extraction limitations put on that particular well? So they can put the hole in the ground because GSAs have no authority to prevent that from happening. They have authority to then implement those other things. So that's where the value of the communication with the GSA really comes into play, and how the drillers can, really provide a good service to the well owner by understanding what those specific requirements are currently and possibly for future, conditions as well.
Yes, thank you, Kathy.
And thank you, Sue, for bringing that up. That's a really good point. And one, I think that the drillers, while they're not in the business of GSAs, maybe they embrace that and they take it upon themselves to properly inform their clients. Any questions? Any more questions?
Yeah, this is Wes Harmon for Big River Drilling. Yeah, I got a question. Here's the problem I see. A guy with just a domestic well and people putting all these rules and restrictions. I can see a water meter, but now wanting the sounding tube, wanting this, wanting that, add a bunch of cost to him. Now I can see putting a meter on there. I can see that to keep track. But a sounding tube and all this other stuff, and it's hard enough as it is for the homeowner. It's not like he's putting in an ag well needing all this stuff. We got to be realistic. It's a big cost for these individuals. And the GSAs, or they can add a bunch of stuff on and cost them a bunch of additional money that's unnecessary. I don't think a sounding tube and all this, they got plenty of places they can sound other than making the domestic owner put a tube down all the way down as well and add a bunch of costs to it.
Yeah, maybe Rick, I'll respond to that. I first of all, thanks for bringing up the cost element. I will tell you that Mr. Krazan, during the development of the North Kings GSA policy, was singing that same tune, and that message was heard loud and clear. And the examples I gave were really for just potential things that have been identified that GSAs may be requiring in the future through policies and rules for their specific GSA. That's not the case right now, and there could always be a provision for certain types of wells requiring certain appurtenances. So when you have an opportunity to, provide comment on those types of things, I would certainly encourage you to do so, because you don't want to have just unnecessary burden. We want to implement tools that are needed for us to reach sustainability, but not just require things for the sake of requiring things. So I think that's very good feedback.
A domestic well is a big difference from an ag well out here.
Right.
And a domestic, they can get backed up real fast, going into a drought. And the more regulation we have, the longer these people are going to be without water.
Yep. Without water. And I'll let Rick comment on that, because there's a provision in place for that.
I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if you guys.
Maybe I just have to mute everyone and then start again. There we go.
All right. Thank you, guys. I don't really have a lot to say to that. I mean, I agree with Wes. I mean, there's a lot of homeowners that barely are able to well in to begin with.
There's a lot.
Sorry, Wes, I cut you off. Trying to get rid of some of this back. Unmute yourself, Wes.
Hey, Rick, this is Scott from Northport Kings. Yeah, Wes, good comment. I don't think everybody's going out in the weeds, to that degree. And as you know, you're a part of our technical group, so what you're saying is heard. It doesn't need to be more complicated than it needs to be.
I've got a comment.
this is Tom Krzan with Kings River Drilling. There's quite a few drilling companies that are drillers only, and then there's quite a few companies that are pump companies only. And with this permitting process, it's almost forcing an overlap. So if a drilling only company tries to get a permit and there's all these additional requirements from the GSA, how is that going to be handled?
Cassie, you're muted.
Did you want to comment on that? I was just waiting for, I'm not sure who wants to respond to that.
To me, that sounded
yeah, then, you know, Tom, unless, this is Scott again, unless I'm missing something, I wouldn't see where the pump company's involvement would have any bearing on, you know, the depth of the well or any of that. I mean, I guess they could work together, but the well driller is going to be the one that is going to have to meet this criteria, whatever it is. You know, unless we're going to specify how deep, you know, their setting is, but I don't think that's the issue.
No, I think I think my question is if a sounding tube has to be put in, a well driller may not be equipped to install a sounding tube, and that's usually would be done by the pump company. But now he's out there trying to get a permit, and this becomes one of the requirements. And how does he add that into his cost, or doesn't add it into his cost? So I guess what I'm trying to say, in some situations, the drill only goes up to a certain point, and then some of the requirements by the GSA is really becomes a requirement really for the pump company that follows in back of the driller.
Yeah, and I would hope, yeah, common sense would prevail in that for sure. You know, the whole thing about a sounding tube, but you know, at this point in time, I don't, you know, I'm not that intricately involved with wells, but we've got other ways to measure water without worrying about sounding tubes and something else to get hung up in a hole. But that's just our opinion.
Yeah, the only reason I bring up the sounding tubes is because it's built into the regulations, and that was one of the things that I was kind of battling with in terms of a sounding tube and what the purpose is for the GSA. And it may be different if we have to go in and say disinfect a well because we use the same port. So because it's built into the regulations, and I've read it more than once. That's the only reason I'm kind of bringing it up. I'd almost like to see the sounding tube be struck from any regulations or.
Well, again, I'm just speaking for myself. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's just one more piece of clutter in the hole that you've got to deal with. So, and I don't believe it's in our regulation yet. So we haven't finalized ours.
Do any other GSAs want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, this is Cassie with the North Kings GSA. We do not have a requirement for sounding tubes either. And I don't know if Chad's still on the line with Kings River East. I don't think they have any kind of requirement either. So I'm not aware of any of the Kings Subbasin GSAs that have a requirement for sounding tubes at this point. That was just an example.
Yeah, if they have, they're overthinking things, I guess, Cassie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I definitely heard the concerns. I think a lot of the GSPs identify that as a potential thing that they could do, but I'm not aware of anyone who's moving forward with that at this point.
Yeah, Tom, and Wes, it's probably just boilerplate that maybe just got left into some of those, but it should not be in the final versions.
Great answer. I really appreciate that. Thanks. Because it does put us in a little bit of a funny position, because not only being the contractor, now we're having to become an expert in all the different regulatory requirements of multiple different agencies. So it isn't just like we're dealing with, Fresno County or Tulare County, because, for example, like last year, Tulare County went to a 50-foot minimum seal. And now with the complication with the GSAs laid over the top of that, is just and we're not only dealing with Fresno County, A lot of us are in Madera County, Tulare County, and Kings County. And each one of those has their own set of requirements. So at least from our standpoint, from a driller standpoint, it is a little bit complicated without a central source to go to for information. But I do appreciate Fresno County's website that does definitely help out. So I do want to say thank you.
And we'll be adding this video to our website in environmental health as well. And the last meeting, we still haven't gotten that up on our website, so we'll add that as well as also. Any other questions? I'm noticing in the chat that Haynes and Sons asked a question about the letter we were talking about earlier, and it does. The sample letter for domestic privates does get sent out automatically after a certain process, after the well is finalized. So yeah, that does get sent out. Any other questions? It's your time. You got the GSAs right here.
Well, I guess an obvious question would be, since we do have multiple GSAs here, is there anything that's unique that any particular GSA would like to add that may have not possibly been covered? Because right now it still sounds like it's pretty nebulous, and I don't see any particular requirements, at least from a driller standpoint, at this time. But if there's something within Fresno County, I'd sure like to know it.
Yeah, this is Cassie with North Kings GSA. The only policy that we've adopted related to new wells being drilled within our GSA boundary is the new well review policy that I spoke about during the presentation. So at this point, that's all we have implemented, and don't have anything on the horizon for the foreseeable future. So.
This has been from the Delta Mendota GSP area, or we don't have currently any we have one policy that we've adopted as a GSA, and so we're just starting to wrap our minds around what kind of management actions are even feasible, and really kind of in a data gathering process. But down the road, there will be more and more policies that are adopted to try to help us meet our sustainability goals. And so I guess one concern that may come up is, we could ultimately have requirements on wells being drilled in above or below certain aquifers or the cork and clay layer, and moratoriums on extractions from sub-aquifer wells. So these are just things to keep aware of as drillers, that really, this is just the start of the process for pretty much everyone. I think, Cassie, you mentioned the North Kings. You guys adopted policy number 1. We're just getting the first crack at this right now.
That's right. That's a good point. Thank you. And I think the important thing, that is valuable about these conversations is an opportunity for you to connect. And I just can't emphasize how important it is to express those concerns. You guys are the ones that are out dealing with the well owners and processing these permits. And it's just very valuable to have that input, because, you sit in your box and you develop things, and I'll just use the new well review policy as an example. It went through 15 iterations, and it was a pretty simple policy. Just let us review, collect some data, have an opportunity to engage. And it's just an indication of how, as we move forward with policy development, how much input is going to be needed so that we can get it right, address the need, but not have it be overly burdensome. So I just encourage you to keep that communication going, and really, I know it's another layer of, coordination, but, we'll do our best to keep you informed, and you can do your best to keep us informed, and that will help us moving forward.
And we want to keep this kind of control here. my understanding, and I could have this wrong, but if we're not sustainable by 2040, the state's going to move in and do this. And we don't want that to happen. So we want to make sure we're making our own decisions. That's what's best for our area.
And we've got to show that interim forward progress too. So that's really what Ben was talking about. You know, we're getting into the implementation phase, and we've got to meet our milestones along the way to keep that control at the local level. So we look forward to working with all of you moving forward, and hope that the phone starts ringing and we're able to discuss and collaborate on activities that are happening within the GSA boundaries.
All right, if there's no other questions, I'd like to ask one. To the drillers and the GSAs both, how valuable do you think these types of meetings are going to be in the future once we get more GSAs adopting policies and that kind of thing? How is this helpful to you? Is this a waste of your time? What do you think moving forward?
I'll let the drillers respond first. Any drillers want to chime in?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to definitely say thank you because we, like I said, we do operate in other counties also. And I think this particular group is being much more proactive than what we're experiencing elsewhere. And you know, for the individual GSAs, they're looking at their own, you know, territory, and of course the counties are also. But again, the drillers now, we're dealing in multiple counties who have the overlay of multiple GSAs. So, and then at the same time, we're supposed to be the ones that are knowledgeable to go to explain it to the potential customer. So once again, this type of meeting for me is extremely good, and I do want to say thank you.
That's good, and that's kind of what we're trying to do, is be helpful here, getting all the players on the same page. Anybody else?
And this is Sue. Yeah, this is Sue. I just want to also encourage the drillers to speak up seriously, because when I first started doing this as a domestic well user, I live in Easton, and I work at Self-Help Enterprises, and I was basically told, "So sorry, there's not really a place at the table for you," when this all started. Well, guess what? That's changed. And it's because a few of us have said, no, we're coming to the table. And then people like Cassie and some others have said, we want you at the table. And so it really, 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 really is important for the drillers to go through Tom if that's what you want to do, or go directly to somebody you know at the county, or go to a GSA person you know, but express what you're seeing. Express the frustrations that you have. Express what is and isn't working. Tell them this is working, but it could be better this way. Speak up. Please, for all of us who are domestic well owners, we need you, the drillers, to speak up to the agencies to say what is and isn't working, and it'll work out better for everybody. So don't pretend like what you say doesn't work and doesn't matter. It will matter. Please, please speak up and express your thoughts.
I think that's a great,
Hi, everybody.
Great comment.
I'd like to make a comment. My name is Dao. I'm with the Asian Business Institute and Resource Center. I work with local Southeast Asian farmers as well as domestic well owners, and as well. I'm also located in the North Kings. And first of all, I'd like to thank Cassie and the North Kings team for being very transparent through this whole process, because I've been working with Cassie the whole time. And then just a message to the drillers from me is, please do continue to engage with your clientele. Recently, I just got a small farmers who her well went dry, so she freaked out, and right now she's in I believe she's still on a 6-week waiting list to get the withdrawal process or something. So I'm working with her, getting on the whole system, from finding a driller to finding somebody to lend her a lender, and also the whole 9 yards. And just please do continue the conversation, because there's only so much the North Kings or a GSA could do on its own when they're implementing policy. So it's also great to also have that's in a messenger from another perspective. When you're meeting with the clientele of there's these new policy that you have to be aware of, and goes back to what Sue just said earlier. you guys are going to be the one who knows what works and what doesn't, you know. So that's just my message.
This is Sue. I'm going to follow up real quick with, if drillers, if you know people whose wells are close to going dry, because this is another dry year, we don't need a repeat of what we had a few years ago where everybody's dry. Self-Help Enterprises, again, has some funding to help with getting some of the wells replaced. I think they can provide some of the tanks for interim water. I think they can provide some bottled water. But anyway, if you don't know Self-Help, just Google it. And it takes a while. You can't do everybody all at once, but that service is available up and down the valley in 9 different counties. So connect people with Self-Help Enterprises for the interim issues if they find it, and sometimes even be able to fund new wells.
All right, so I'm getting some comments in the chat, not necessarily questions, but people found this kind of exchange helpful and even educational, which that's good. That's good to hear. If there's no other questions or comments, I'll give about 10 seconds more for people to either chat or speak.
I'll just give a quick plug, Rick, for, again, thank you all for joining us. We do have some resources on the North Kings GSA website. I know North Fork and Kings River East also participated in this effort with targeted information for domestic well owners. So if you would like some copies of that, feel free to reach out to me. You can provide them to your customers, or I can get you a digital copy, or you can access it on our website. We also have a school webinar that we're going to be hosting in April, and all those conversations are just geared on equipping people with information and resources. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free to reach out. And I'm going to sign off. Thanks everyone for joining me.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you here.
And thank you, Rick, for putting this together. It was very helpful.
Hey, no problem.
Good job, Rick. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks. And sorry, Wes, for muting you mid-sentence. It was not intentional.